Hello, and welcome to the LLG vlog. You're with me, Dennis Hall, LLG Bulletin Editor, and as usual, Helen Bennett, LLG's Executive Director of Policy and Governance. But she's just back from the Spring Conference at Bristol. How are you feeling after LLG's big conference, Helen?
I tell you, I'm feeling exhausted, but I'm actually feeling really excited for the sector because what I saw there was just, despite all the challenges the local government sector is
Yeah.
facing, just such a pulling together of community.
Hmm.
And the juniors really impressed me. I'll come on to our junior lawyer
Yeah,
delegates
good.
later, but it was so lo lovely to meet old friends, and they are friends in local government.
Indeed.
Um, New and interesting and varied people. There were a lot of first timers. And I must give a little shout out to a colleague of mine from a long time ago, Joyce, who tells me she never misses the Grapevine and the
Wow.
podcast and vlog. So give her a little shout out there, Dennis.
Excellent, excellent. That sounds great. You're right, it is a family. Well, I followed it online and there was very extensive coverage of a whole range of
Yeah.
topics, something for everyone. But perhaps I should comment initially on the content overall, because it was one conference, one theme, democracy, devolution, and development. It's far more than that, in fact, with the
Mm.
three programs. Program A, which I covered, the main topical program, this had in it devolution and LGR, which will be of interest to many, many members across the country at the current time, regeneration, the new standards regime, and the latest on the changes to public procurement. And also, two fascinating, rather unique presentations. What is legal leadership like in the US? Well, we had something on that with a fascinating speaker from America. And second, how law and business should blend in much closer with the curiously entitled presentation, The O-Shaped Lawyer.
Yeah, well, I think we're all getting a little bit O-shaped the older we get, Dennis. But this was definitely more of a skills-based session with a focus on introducing delegates to those key skills that they broadly need to be a better lawyer. And topics included a workshop on team working, terribly important to develop. In this context, it was a tech company, and there was a
Yeah.
section on the importance of good working relationships at work, piece for junior lawyers on flame proofing decision making,
Mm.
understanding local government finance, and again, specifically for junior lawyers, and how to write a good piece of legal advice. And that was all going on in program B. So I probably didn't make that very clear at the start.
Yeah.
And what I will say is that program B was as well attended as the main session. And I think that's
Mm.
interesting to me that there's a lot on offer for all different types of people, but that the topics that were being discussed were highly of a high interest to our members. But program B rounded off with another piece dedicated to juniors, and this time it was focusing on the different types of local authorities and their functions, because I
Yeah.
think that's a particularly difficult thing for juniors to get their head around. And obviously, with the move towards unitaries, it's really important that they understand what we're dealing with now and
Yes.
how then we need to get there.
I think you're right. I think over the years, juniors are particularly interested in skills-based
Yeah.
presentations, the soft skills, the things that are not necessarily in textbooks, if I can put it like that. And that seems to be borne out by the level of attendance this year. And finally, there was Program C, which took delegates through those important changes to the planning system, many of which we've already covered in the bulletin. And there was also a piece on AI and ethics, again, a topic of considerable interest at this time. And there was also an important presentation on maintaining well-being and mental health. And Programme C also looked at that landmark Supreme Court case, Helen, on gender. Again, something we've looked at in an earlier vlog. All of these are very live issues. And Programme C rounded off with a presentation on the value of pupillage, interestingly, and pupillage programmes.
Mm. Well, I was hosting the EDI session, so I'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. But the AI and ethics was an interesting one, and of course, there was lots of chat on the ground about the recent case involving Haringey Law Centre
Yeah.
and the barrister's use of case citations, which don't exist, and there's no finding that it was generated by AI because there couldn't be. But that's the talk, that's the suspicion, because they simply don't exist. And of course, the solicitors got themselves in a lot of trouble. Even though they didn't produce it, they were nevertheless responsible for it. And there was a lot of chat about that. And we missed the decision, because I think the decision came out on the 6th of June, was certainly published, that they were not going to be put forward for court of contempt of court proceedings, but nevertheless are all being referred, as previously advised, to their respective regulatory bodies. So that there was a lot, that was the big chat around AI, I think.
Yeah. Can I say on that, I'll pick up those points for the bulletin that comes out this Friday, so that there are relevant postings coming on that.
Excellent. But I mean, there was so much going on, and we can't cover it all. But let's delve into a couple of main highlights, let's say, because I think there was lots of highlights. But for you, it's got to be devolution, hasn't it? It's got to be reorganization.
Helen, you're right. As far as the program I covered, the program A, yes. But as you said, I could have picked from a number of the topics that I saw, but I've got to pick the panel on devolution and LGR simply because it's one of the most live issues and ones of particular interest to members of our organisation, and especially those that are affected directly by the decision making that's ongoing. Most delegates will be interested in the content of the presentation because of the government announcements, and particularly on the topic of reorganisation. But also I marked this up because it provided a rare opportunity to hear commentary from two monitoring officers whose lived experience of LGR would provide essential learning points on what the LGR process involved for them and would involve for our delegates as well. But let me turn first to the panel and the team of speakers from Capsticks. They were brilliant. Tiffany Cloynes and Rebecca Gilbert. Tiffany started with an examination of the legislative framework. It was a high-level treatment of the topic, but it set the current scene about reorganisation and its link to the government's mission, moving power from Whitehall and, frankly, the ambition to create more mayors. She covered the devolution white paper and also the devolution priority programme. She also mentioned a fascinating report which hadn't crossed my desk previously, but it was a report by the Institute of Government and Grant Thornton entitled the Dual Delivery Report. Now, she referred to this on a number of points and stages, and I've felt it was so important. I'll include this in Bulletin 22 this Friday, but it was about how to organise and be involved in reorganisation. She also reviewed the legislative background, as I've said, and looked at combined authorities and in particular combined county authorities. Rebecca Gilbert, again, very detailed perspective and a deep dive into the white paper on strategic authorities and the three levels that are planned with different levels of power. All of this was fascinating stuff and stuff that our delegates would need to know about. Again, Peter Ware went into setting up combined authorities. Incidentally, has direct involvement. Again, I call this lived experience. I think this is the buzz phrase at the moment. Peter's worked on the East Midlands, Lincolnshire and Lancashire county combined authorities, so he can speak from his own direct experience of the priority programme, issues with consultation and the difficulties of transferring people. And he outlined the particular problems that go well beyond the TUPE transfer mechanisms that we're familiar with. So there was a lot in this. He mentioned there's a need to have a well-resourced team when working on processes of this kind, the need to establish key work streams, and the need for the monitoring officer group to be established early and to take a full part in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it was absolutely brilliant to hear from Linda Jones and Claire Liddell, for their lived experience in the North West of going through the local government reorganisation process.
Indeed.
I think I was really interested to hear about how you balance the shadow authority, but you tell me what you picked out of what they had to say.
Well, yes, I think the key point, the one single key point that comes from Linda's and Claire's presentation was this: the whole process requires the lawyer to be fully embedded in the program management that leads to the vesting day, being involved in all of the work streams where legal is involved. And the ambition is to get to the vesting day, not with everything dealt with and everything ticked, but to establish what they call the stable state that needs to be achieved by day one, leaving other things that can be left to be dealt with during the first year of involvement. And Linda and Claire went into all of this, the importance of multitasking, team working, as I say, being involved in the work streams that you need to be involved in. And our members who are in LGI areas will be aware of the technology and terminology of the disaggregation of county council and county council functions and the aggregation of district council functions, how to deal with contracts and assets and deal with the necessary transfers that are involved in all of this, the importance of people issues and bringing together people to deal with these issues in an effective way. Not straightforward. And of course, Claire emphasised the importance of getting an early start on the preparation of the Constitution and to be prepared to amend this in readiness for vesting day, making structural changes orders, working with Parliament and civil servants and the government to make sure that you're in the room when these are being drawn up. And of course, the session rounded off with veteran speaker Phil McCourt, who had his own take on these processes. His catchline was prepare priorities and record things. Councils do not run in the same way, he said, and I think there's a lot in that. Helen, I don't hope he doesn't mind me calling him a veteran presenter.
I think he'd rather I think he'd rather like it. I think he'd be pleased by that. I don't
that's all right then. That's all
certainly
right.
wouldn't be offended. So let's just moving back to the shadow authority. I think the key takeaway there was managing expectations, because we heard that they're going to be chomping at the bits to do things, and yet they do not have any power to do things. Obviously, until the vesting day. So it's about managing them every time. I think it was Claire. I apologize, I can't remember exactly who said it, but they said every time we were giving training, we started with a reminder about the powers they currently had, and what they could currently do, which was nothing. But also to be really mindful of those councillors who are still in position, who still have to get on with the business of the council, and who might be feeling, a little wounded. They might not have retained their seat, that will be a difficult time for them as well. So it's managing people. This is the soft skills that lawyers very much need to have. The other thing that we learned from the session was that democratic services need to be ready day one.
Oh yes.
There's no streamlining for them, and gently, like they will be expected to be going immediately off the bat ready. So they're certainly going to be under a lot of pressure, and obviously legal can play a part in supporting them.
Indeed.
Now, you were rather taken, I understand, by the Americans who we heard from. Fascinating.
Well, it was absolutely fascinating, and it was a rare opportunity. And I can't remember when we've last done this, for a bit of comparative law and comparative practice with another jurisdiction, the US, with which we have a number of similarities and parallels, as I now know. But the keynote address, as you say, was given by this US municipal lawyer, Jeff Dahner. I thought it was a very slick presentation and very informative. And he discussed very concisely the issues concerning legal leadership in local government in the US. And his perspective comes from an organization, a local authority in Providence in Rhode Island. He has 16 attorneys under his control, 9 non-attorneys. They use external lawyers like we do for advice for the same reasons as well as we would use them. He talked about the conflicts and similarities in the things that they do and we do. Municipal lawyers are in-house counsel like us. They take on the role of advising a corporation in a sense similar to us. They also have the power to draft legislation to put forward at state level. They deal with criminal process, building code compliance, and what we call licensing, but they call it something else. But uniquely, they have things called state open meetings, in order to ensure greater transparency in decision making. And I got the impression, this is a distinction, I got the impression that they promote far more legislation than we can put forward legislation to Parliament and provide and make bylaws and so forth. I got the impression they do it to a higher degree there at the federal level. And the main issues for municipal lawyers, the perception of public officials is perhaps not as good as it should be. But much of their work is very similar. They are public servants and they believe in the public ethos that we would share with them. Political pressures, yes, these can be a challenge, but Jeff recognizes, as we would, that lawyers work for complex organizations where he feels conflict is inevitable. And his motto in working in the municipalities in America is, the essential key role for a lawyer there is to be passionately dispassionate. I remember this, it's a phrase that'll stick in my mind. We are here to help politicians to implement their decisions. Municipal lawyers in America are not decision makers, neither are we, of course. And we have to be, he said, the guardrails against excess and going beyond the rules that apply to their organizations. As he said, their role is to advise, not to decide.
Yeah.
But he said something interesting as well. We have to recognize that lawyers have to be, they must remember that their role is impactful. And I think that's certainly true in our sector, isn't it, Helen? So I was fascinated by this. I learned a lot. I thought it was an interesting insight into another jurisdiction where local government is clearly an important part of the public infrastructure, if I can put it like that.
Yeah, it was fascinating. I mean, just to wrap from my end on the day, I would say, obviously, the EDI session. Now, this is something we've covered extensively on the podcast and the vlog in relation to the Supreme Court case, the Scottish case, determining what's meant by biological sex. So we had a very safe space discussion. It was standing room only, actually. It was very well attended. And I presented the session with Dee Secker, who's our new EDI director, who's brilliant as well. And really, it was just a discussion about how local authorities are looking to address the impact of the decision, and what's on their desk, what are they being asked to do at the moment, whilst obviously starting to examine some of the things we outlined before around policies and engagement and stakeholders, etc., etc. We're a little bit hamstrung because we do not have the final guidance from the Commission, and what we do have could be subject to change. So we are all keenly waiting for that. But what I can tell listeners is that, or viewers, in fact, we are holding a webinar on the 25th of June. It's on the events page. Anybody who's struggling or has it on their desk or thinks they ought to know, and frankly, that's probably everyone, really should sign up to watch that. And then LLG will take a view as to what it might do or what it might be capable of doing in respect of supporting our members through the impact of this. The other thing I absolutely just have to mention were how fabulous the juniors were. It is so encouraging to see, I would say, the next generation. I'm not sure if we're on the one after that, Dennis, to be quite honest. But really bright, really engaged. They've done their prep. They were, sometimes you feel a bit worried with the aging population of our membership and retention and succession issues about who's going to carry on and do this good work. And I felt very much reassured having attended the conference that there are some brilliant people out there. So that was really, really good to see.
Excellent. Can I come back to EDI? It is in the news at the moment, actually, for all the wrong reasons. There's a sense in a number of articles that I've been looking at that some legal firms, some public organizations are rolling back on the policies that they have on EDI, or as it's now referred to, DIE, because of the Trump effect, that big public corporations are now watering down their policies on this area. And of course, in our own country, after the last local elections, there are announcements from certain quarters that parties that are now in a certain party that's now in power in our area, in our country, up and down the country, are now rolling back on or rowing back on the policies that relate to EDI, and I think that may be an issue that's going to be a concern over the coming months for some of our delegate members.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we will pick this up and we will examine all of that, Dennis. 100%.
Right. Well, I've got to ask before we sign off, the awards ceremony. Obviously wasn't there, but I saw some of the pictures. I saw the glamour and excitement of it all and lots of smiling faces. But you were there. Can you give us the inside line on what happened?
It was glamorous. Yeah, it was a fantastic evening. When sometimes when you
Good.
talk about awards, people
Mm,
sort of roll their eyes and think, oh, but actually, in the moment when you're there, when you see the actual real impact and what it means to people who've dedicated their lives or done something amazing, we absolutely have to keep going with it because it is fantastic. There's a
yeah.
lot of coverage out there about the awards. Local government lawyers done a nice piece as well. But
Good.
I will just say this. The awards saw the first ever inaugural award of the Suki Binjal Rising Star
Mm,
Award, and I was very privileged and honoured to introduce it. But what made it so fantastic was the winner, who is Nikki Agarmani, and I hope I've done that justice, from
uh-huh.
West Northamptonshire Council. I mean, her nomination was absolutely brilliant, and I know that Suki Binjal would have just um, taken to Nikki and just continued to inspire her if she was still with us today. So that just wrapped up the evening lovely, and a huge congratulations to everyone,
Hmm.
and a big thanks to the team because huge effort to pull that out.
Excellent. Did you do a karaoke yourself?
I might have made an appearance at the very end of the night, but certainly not a solo performance. But there was, you couldn't get on it. There were the queues for the karaoke, Dennis. Everybody wanted to go. So it was really funny.
Good. Well, I'm going to spend some time today looking on SharePoint to find where some of the interesting videos have been hidden and tucked away. Yes, I'll have a good look. I'll probably spend a few days looking at that to see exactly what happened on this. The photographs look absolutely fine. It looked like a great event.
It really was a great event, and we
It
need
looked
it,
like
don't we?
BAFTA.
Like the BAFTAs. I do think we need to stop and remind ourselves because everybody is really going through it at this time, and we
Yes,
need to take that time to
great.
to be joyous and to celebrate everything we do. I think the membership really need it, and it was great to see it play out
Yeah,
in the way it did.
I understand why you say that. I myself am an award winner, and I may as well tell. I spend a lot of time being skeptical, but I thought very hard about this, and I'm sure other people do as well who've been involved. It is recognition, and often it's recognition not just for the individual, but for the teams that they work with and for their local authorities. And we should celebrate success, as I think you're inferring by what you're saying here. So I'm one of those who, as some people sometimes do, have a bit of skepticism about this, but I've changed completely over the years on this, and I realize the importance of that recognition and the need to celebrate success. So finally, I think I can say, Helen, some fun was had by all, and on that note, perhaps we should round off. Can I thank everyone for watching? But by the way, can I say this? If anything catches your eye in the local government legal news this week, let us know and we'll do what we can to future it. Sorry, to to put it in a vlog in the future. If anybody has anything that they'd like us to talk about. So on that note, that's it from me, Helen. Thanks for joining me today.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Dennis.
All the best now. Bye.